The neon signs of Sector 23's food district painted the rain-slicked streets in a kaleidoscope of colors. Rey Voss pulled his collar up against the drizzle, grinning as he patted the credit chip in his pocket. The energy core job had paid well, and he was looking forward to treating himself and Kai to some real food for once. Not the synthetic protein bars that passed for meals in the worker districts. Matsuyushi's Moto Ramen was their usual spot, a hole-in-the-wall joint wedged between a defunct maglev station and a cramped residential complex. The smell of rich broth and fresh noodles wafted through the evening air, making Ray's stomach growl. He checked his wrist display. 1945. Kai would be arriving soon. What Ray didn't notice was the figure watching from the shadows of a defunct advertising holoboard. Olivia Blaze had picked up his trail 3 blocks back, and she'd been following his meandering path through the market district ever since. Her core sec sensor confirmed the facial match. 98% probability. This was their person of interest from the Sector 23 anomaly. Ray was halfway to Madame Chen's when his smuggler's instinct finally kicked in. Something felt off. The crowd's flow had shifted ever so slightly, like water parting around a shark. He caught a glimpse of pristine core-sec armor in his peripheral vision, and his heart rate spiked. "Stop right there, Voss!" Olivia's voice cut through the market's ambient noise like a knife. Ray didn't hesitate. He dove into the crowd, shouldering past a group of factory workers heading home from their shift. The credit chip could wait. Survival came first. Olivia burst into motion, her enhanced speed carrying her forward in a blur. But the crowded market worked against her. Every time she approached supersonic velocity, a vendor cart or cluster of pedestrians forced her to brake or dodge. The masses of people created a chaotic obstacle course that negated her greatest advantage. Ray knew these streets like the back of his hand. He vaulted over a noodle cart, sending steam and startled shouts into the air. A quick turn took him down a narrow alley lined with makeshift dwellings. The space was barely wide enough for one person, forcing Olivia to slow to normal speed. "Core sec! Clear the way!" she shouted. But the residents only moved sluggishly, some deliberately taking their time. Nobody in the worker districts rushed to help CorpSec. Ray burst out of the alley into the busy intersection near the old transit hub. Hundreds of workers were changing shifts, creating a sea of bodies. He dove into the crowd, using their cover to make his way toward the abandoned maintenance tunnels. If he could just reach the access point behind the old recycling plant. Olivia emerged from the alley in time to see Ray's distinctive jacket disappearing into the crowd. She pushed her enhancement to its limits, processing the movements of dozens of people simultaneously, calculating the optimal path through the chaos. Her vision stretched time, showing her the gaps before they formed. Ray risked a glance back and saw her gaining ground despite the crowd. He changed tactics, cutting through the local night market. The narrow aisles between stalls were packed with shoppers, haggling over black market tech and vat-grown produce. He knocked over a stack of empty crates behind him, buying precious seconds. The commotion had drawn attention. People began to scatter, finally giving Olivia the clear paths she needed. She accelerated, becoming a white blur in the neon-lit night. Ray felt the rush of displaced air as she nearly caught him, ducking at the last second as her hand grasped at empty space. "You're only making this worse for yourself," Olivia called out, her voice distorting with speed. That's when she spotted him. Kai stood at the edge of the crowd, his presence drawing her enhanced senses like a magnet. Her tactical overlay flickered with warning signals. Something about him was different. "Squad! Target spotted!" Olivia barked into her comm. "Secondary suspect, northeast corner. Engage!" 4 Core Sec officers in Guardian Series combat armor emerged from the crowd, their weapons trained on Kai. The crowd scattered, leaving a clear line of sight between the officers and their target. Kai's mind raced through scenarios. He could disable them all in seconds, but that would expose his abilities. Instead, he turned and ran, purposefully keeping his speed just above what a peak human athlete might achieve. "In pursuit!" the officers shouted, their boots thundering against the wet pavement as they gave chase. Kai weaved through the market district, knocking over carts and creating obstacles without using his full strength. The officers were well trained, maintaining formation as they pursued him through the maze of streets. Their Guardian armor gave them enhanced mobility, allowing them to keep pace despite his calculated head start. The chase led them deeper into Sector 23's industrial zone. Kai ducked through a maze of pipes and manufacturing equipment, the steam from pressure release valves creating a disorienting fog. He could sense the officers splitting up, trying to flank him. "Target heading toward the garment district," one officer reported, moving to intercept. Kai found himself cornered between a high-security fence and 3 approaching officers. The 4th had circled around, cutting off his escape route. They moved in slowly, their rifles trained on his position. "No more running," the lead officer commanded. "On your knees, hands behind your head." Kai's enhanced senses picked up their steady heartbeats, the subtle whir of their Guardian armor's servo motors. They were treating him like any other runner from the districts. Time seemed to slow as Kai calculated his odds. The fence behind him stretched up 3 meters, an impossible jump for a normal human. He could see the officers' fingers on their triggers, their stance professional but relaxed. They weren't expecting anything superhuman. In a burst of speed that turned their confident expressions to shock, Kai leaped straight up, catching a pipeline overhead. The officers opened fire with their pulse rifles, but he was already moving, using his strength to launch himself over their heads. "What the?" One officer went down from a precise kick that cracked his helmet's visor. Another's rifle clattered across the ground from a strike that bent the reinforced barrel. "Enhanced! He's enhanced!" the lead officer shouted, scrambling to switch weapons. "Switch to EN1s! Now!" Kai could hear the distinctive whine of the enhanced neutralizers being drawn and charging up. He needed to end this quickly. With supernatural agility, he dodged another officer's desperate grab, using the man's own momentum to throw him into his teammate. But he'd taken too long. The lead officer had his EN1 ready, the weapon's blue targeting light painting Kai's chest. "Target locked!" The shot caught Kai in the shoulder just as he was preparing to leap again. The EN1's barely visible pulse spread across his body like ice through his veins. Immediately, he felt his powers dampen, like someone had thrown a heavy blanket over his senses. His enhanced strength faded, leaving him vulnerable as any unenhanced human. The remaining officers moved in, confident now that their target was neutralized. But they hadn't counted on what happened next. "Suspect contained," the lead officer reported into his comm, EN1 aimed steadily on Kai. "Requesting immediate—" A high-pitched whine cut through the air, followed by a rapid-fire series of pneumatic bursts. From the shadows above, 3 projectiles shot out in quick succession. They expanded mid-flight into gleaming webs of smart fiber, crackling with electromagnetic energy. The officers barely had time to look up before the nets enveloped them. The smart fibers contracted instantly, wrapping around their Guardian armor like metallic pythons. Blue energy arced across the nets, interfering with the suit's servo systems and sending the officers crashing to the ground, immobilized. "Hostile!" one managed to shout before a 4th net silenced him. The smart fibers automatically securing around his helmet. Phoenix emerged from the shadows above, a sleek launcher smoking slightly in her hands. Her dark combat suit seemed to absorb the dim industrial lighting, making her appear like a living shadow. "Symmetry Collective's latest toy," she said, with a grim smile, helping Kai to his feet. "Electromagnetic containment nets. Turns their fancy armor into very expensive coffins." The officers struggled against their bonds, but the more they fought, the tighter the smart fibers contracted. Their comms crackled with static, jammed by the net's interference field. "Can you move?" she asked sharply, already moving to support him. Kai nodded, though even that simple movement felt strange. "Something's wrong," he managed. "My abilities, they're gone." Phoenix's expression hardened. "Questions later. Right now, we need to disappear." She helped him toward a maintenance tunnel entrance, trying to mask her concern at how heavily he was leaning on her. She'd never seen him like this. Whatever Core Sec had done, it was something new. "Time to go," Phoenix said, pulling Kai to his feet. She tossed a smoke grenade that filled the area with dense, sensor-blocking fog. She then triggered an EMP pulse through the nets, disabling the officer's armor completely before helping Kai into the tunnel. Emergency sirens wailed in the distance as they descended into darkness, leaving the immobilized Core Sec team behind. "I'm powerless," Kai asked through gritted teeth as they made their way deeper underground. "What are we going to do?" "I don't know," Phoenix admitted, her voice tense. "I've never seen them use whatever that weapon was, but we'll figure it out. Right now, we need to get you somewhere safe." Kai nodded, fighting down his rising panic. The loss of his abilities left him feeling half-blind, like a crucial part of himself had been ripped away. "They have my friend Rey," he said, focusing on what mattered. "We need to—" "One crisis at a time," Phoenix cut him off. "First we get you stable. Then we figure out what they did to you. After that, we plan Rey's rescue." She paused, studying him in the dim tunnel light. "Whatever they used on you, it's new tech. Corp Sec is evolving their tactics. The game's changing, Kai." They continued deeper into the tunnels, leaving the chaos above behind. Kai could only hope that whatever had been done to him was temporary. The alternative was unthinkable. For now, all he could do was trust Phoenix and the Collective, and pray that Rey could hold out until they found a way to reach him. They didn't stop running until they were deep in the maintenance tunnels beneath the sector. Kai leaned against a wall, his enhanced abilities slowly returning as the EN1's effects wore off. "That was reckless," Phoenix said, but there was a hint of approval in her voice. "You could have taken them all down in seconds." "And exposed everything we've worked for," Kai replied, flexing his fingers as sensation returned. "Rey's been captured. We need to find out where they took him." Phoenix's expression hardened. "We'll get him back. But first, we need to talk about what happens next. Core Sec knows about you now, not everything, but enough to make you a target. The game's changing, Kai." He nodded, knowing she was right. The careful balance he'd maintained for years was shattered. As his powers returned fully, he could sense the city's surveillance networks searching for him, Corp Sec channels buzzing with activity. The hunt was on. "We'll need help," he said finally. "It's time to meet the rest of the Collective." Phoenix smiled, a fierce expression in the dim tunnel light. "They're ready. The question is, are you?" Kai thought of Rey, probably being interrogated right now in some Core Sec facility. He thought of his father, who had sacrificed everything to give him these abilities. The time for hiding was over. "Let's find out," he answered, and they disappeared deeper into the tunnels, leaving the echoes of the night's chaos behind them.